I still remember the exact moment he said it. We were sitting at the dinner table in my daughter's house. The smell of roasted chicken filled the kitchen, and my granddaughter was drawing something at the corner of the table with coloured pencils. Everything looked normal, but normal things often hide ugly truths. My son-in-law, Daniel, walked in late from work, threw his jacket on the chair, and immediately frowned when he saw me. Again, he didn't even try to hide it anymore. For a moment, nobody moved. Daniel was still holding his fork in the air, frozen like a statue. Emily looked from him to me, completely confused. "Mom, what do you mean?" she asked quietly. I stepped back inside for a second and closed the door behind me, not because I wanted to stay, but because I wanted them to hear the truth clearly. Daniel slowly put his fork down. His voice came out tense. "What kind of joke is this?" "It's not a joke," I said calmly. Emily walked closer to me. "Mum, what bank?" I looked at her gently. "The one that approved the mortgage for this house." Daniel frowned. "We already have a mortgage with Central Trust Bank," he said sharply. "What does that have to do with you?" I sighed. That house, that beautiful 2-story house with the white porch and the little garden Emily loved so much, they believed Daniel had bought it, but the truth was a little different. "You remember 3 years ago," I said slowly, "when you told me the bank rejected your loan application." For the last 2 years, every time he saw me in that house, his face changed, like someone had switched off the lights. I stood up politely. "Daniel, dinner is ready." He looked at the table, then at me, and rolled his eyes. "Of course you're here again?" My daughter, Emily, nervously laughed. "Mum just came to help with dinner." But Daniel didn't sit down. Instead, he leaned against the kitchen counter and crossed his arms. "You know," he said loudly, "most people your age understand when it's time to stop interfering in other people's lives." The room went quiet. Emily lowered her eyes. My granddaughter stopped drawing. I felt something tighten inside my chest. For 20 years, I worked as a nurse. For 20 years, I woke up at 5 a.m., worked double shifts, saved money and raised my daughter alone after my husband died, and now I was standing in my own daughter's kitchen, being treated like a burden. I tried to stay calm. "I'm not interfering," I said softly. "Emily asked me to help with the kids." Daniel laughed. Not a friendly laugh, the kind that makes a room colder. "Help," he repeated. Then he looked directly at me and said the words that would change everything. "Useless old woman again." Emily gasped quietly. "Daniel, please." But he wasn't finished. "You come here every week, pretending you're helping, but all you do is sit around and act like you own the place." I felt my hand shaking slightly, but I didn't raise my voice. Not yet. Instead, I slowly untied the kitchen apron I had been wearing. Emily looked confused. "Mum?" I folded the apron neatly and placed it on the table. Daniel smirked. "Oh, what now? Are you offended?" I looked at him for a long moment. Really looked. At the man my daughter had married, the man who thought I had nowhere else to go. Then I quietly picked up my purse. Emily stood up quickly. "Mom, wait." But I gently touched her hand. "It's okay, sweetheart," Daniel scoffed. "Finally, maybe now we can have some peace." I walked toward the door without another word, but right before I stepped outside, I turned back. Daniel was already sitting down at the table, acting like nothing had happened. That's when I said the one sentence that froze him completely. "You're right," I said calmly. "I won't come here anymore." He didn't even look up. "Good." I smiled slightly. "But tomorrow morning," I added, The bank will also stop coming here. Daniel's fork stopped in midair. Emily blinked in confusion. What bank? She asked. I opened the door. Then I said the words that finally made Daniel look at me. The one that owns this house. And for the first time since I met him, my son-in-law looked afraid. Emily nodded. Daniel's face stiffened. Yes, Emily said. They said Daniel's credit history wasn't strong enough. That's right, I said. Daniel shifted in his chair. Why are we talking about this? Because, I continued calmly, a week later you suddenly told Emily the bank changed its decision. Emily looked confused. Daniel said his boss helped him get approval. I shook my head gently. No, sweetheart. Daniel's chair scraped loudly against the floor as he stood up. Enough, he snapped. I don't know what game you're playing, but I raised my hand. Daniel, sit down. Something in my voice made him hesitate, and then, surprisingly, he sat. I took a deep breath. The bank didn't change their decision, I said. Emily frowned. Then how did we get the house? I met her eyes. Because I signed the loan? The silence that followed felt heavier than anything I had ever experienced. Emily stared at me. What? Daniel's face slowly lost its colour. I became the guarantor, I continued. The bank only approved the mortgage because I put my savings and my small apartment as collateral. Emily covered her mouth. Mum, you never told me that. I didn't want you to worry. Daniel suddenly laughed, a forced laugh. Okay, and, he said, being a guarantor doesn't mean you own the house. You're right, I replied. His confidence returned instantly. See? So stop threatening us with... But, I added calmly, the bank also required something else. Daniel's smile faded. What? They required a co-owner. Emily whispered. Mum, don't tell me. I nodded slowly. Yes. Daniel's eyes widened. You're lying? I opened my purse and took out a thin folder, the same folder I had carried for 3 years. I placed it gently on the table. Inside were copies of the property documents. Daniel grabbed them immediately. His eyes moved quickly across the pages, then slower, until finally his hands started shaking. Emily looked at him nervously. Daniel, what is it? He didn't answer. He just stared at the document, at the line that clearly said property ownership, Daniel Carter, 50% Margaret Wilson, 50% my name. Daniel slowly lifted his head and looked at me. For the first time since I met him, his arrogance was gone. You own half the house, he whispered. I nodded calmly. Yes. Emily looked like she might faint. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Because I trusted your husband, I said quietly. Daniel's voice became angry again. You can't just come here and threaten us. I picked up my purse again. I'm not threatening anyone. I walked toward the door. But tomorrow morning, I said softly, I'm meeting with the bank. Daniel stepped forward quickly. What for? I opened the door and gave him the answer that made his face turn pale. To sell my half of the house, Emily gasped. Mom, no. But Daniel understood something much worse. If I sold my share, a stranger could legally move in. And suddenly, the man who called me a useless old woman realized something terrifying. I had just become the most powerful person in that house. Emily grabbed my arm before I could step outside. Mom, please wait, she said, her voice shaking. I turned around slowly. Her eyes were full of confusion and fear. Sell your half of the house? She repeated. You can't be serious. Daniel was standing behind her, his jaw clenched so tightly the muscles in his face twitched, but I noticed something new. He wasn't angry anymore. He was calculating. That kind of silence always worried me more. I gently removed Emily's hand from my arm. "I am serious," I said quietly. Emily shook her head. "But this is our home." For a moment my heart softened. She was still my little girl, the same child who used to run to me after school and show me her drawings. But then I remembered something else, the way she sat silent while her husband called me useless. "Emily," I said gently, "homes are built on respect." Daniel suddenly stepped forward. "Okay," he said quickly, "let's calm down." His tone had completely changed. Now it was polite, almost friendly. "Margaret," he continued, using my name for the first time in months, "I think we all got a little emotional tonight." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh." He forced a small smile. "You know, I didn't mean what I said." I watched him carefully. The same man who, 10 minutes ago, couldn't stand the sight of me was suddenly trying very hard to sound respectful. Interesting. Emily looked hopeful. "See, Mom, he didn't mean it." Daniel nodded quickly. "Exactly. But I had worked with people for 20 years in a hospital. I knew the difference between sincerity and panic, and Daniel was panicking. I looked directly into his eyes. "You called me a useless old woman," he cleared his throat. I was frustrated. "You said I come here pretending to help." He shifted uncomfortably. "That was just a bad choice of words." I tilted my head slightly. "So if the house didn't depend on me, would they still be bad words?" For a second, Daniel didn't answer. And that silence told me everything. Emily looked between us nervously. "Mom, Daniel works hard. He's just stressed." Daniel immediately nodded. "Yes, work has been terrible lately." I crossed my arms. "Really?" "Yes," he said quickly. "The company is cutting budgets. People are losing jobs. It's been a lot of pressure." Something in his voice sounded rehearsed, and suddenly I remembered something, a conversation I overheard 2 weeks ago when Daniel thought I was asleep in the living room. He was on the phone, whispering, talking about money problems. At the time, I didn't say anything, but now things were starting to make sense. I looked at him calmly. "How much debt do you have, Daniel?" His eyes widened. "I don't—" "How much?" I repeated. Emily frowned. "Debt?" Daniel laughed nervously. "She's exaggerating." But I saw the sweat forming on his forehead, so I said the one sentence that shattered his composure completely. "3 credit cards." He froze. "2 personal loans." Emily turned toward him slowly. "Daniel." "And 1 unpaid business investment." Daniel slammed his hand on the table. "Stop." The room fell silent. Emily stared at him. "You told me we were fine." Daniel looked trapped now. He turned toward me. "How do you know about that?" I shrugged calmly. "Hospitals teach you to listen carefully." Emily's voice trembled. "Daniel, is that true?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Emily's face turned pale. "You said the house payments were under control." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "They are." "Are they?" I asked quietly. He glared at me. "Stay out of this." But I shook my head. "I can't." I looked around the house slowly, at the living room, the kitchen, the staircase Emily once proudly showed me when they first moved in. "You see," I said calmly, "if the mortgage stops being paid, the bank doesn't only take your half." Daniel's face slowly darkened. I continued, "They take mine too." Emily whispered, "Oh my God." Daniel suddenly understood what I meant. "You're not selling the house because you're angry," he said quietly. I met his gaze. No, you're doing it because you don't trust me. For the first time that evening, I answered honestly. That's right. Emily sat down slowly, tears forming in her eyes. Mum, what happens if you sell your half? I gave her the truth. A stranger becomes your neighbour. Daniel's breathing grew heavier. Someone could literally move into our house? Yes. And live here? Yes. Emily looked horrified. That's insane! Daniel suddenly whispered something so quiet I almost didn't hear it. No, that can't happen. I watched him carefully because in that moment I realised something important. Daniel wasn't afraid of losing the house. He was afraid of something else, something he didn't want Emily to know. And I had a feeling I was about to find out exactly what it was. That night I didn't argue anymore. I simply left. Emily followed me to the porch, her face pale and confused. Mum, please don't do this, she said quietly. The porch light cast a soft yellow glow on her face, and for a moment I saw the little girl she used to be, the same girl who once cried when her toy rabbit broke. But life changes people, and sometimes silence hurts more than cruel words. I gently placed my hand on her shoulder. Emily, I said softly, I'm not trying to hurt you. Then why does it feel like it? She whispered. I looked toward the living room window. Daniel was standing there, watching us. His arms were crossed and his eyes were dark with anger. But behind that anger, I saw something else. Fear. I warned him, I said quietly. Emily shook her head. He didn't mean what he said. I sighed. Sweetheart, people mean more than they admit. She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Instead, she hugged me tightly. Please don't sell your part of the house, she whispered. I didn't answer, because the truth was, I already had a meeting scheduled for the next morning. The next day, at exactly 9:30 a.m., I walked into a small office on the third floor of a brick building downtown. Across the desk sat a man named Mr. Harper, a property lawyer. He adjusted his glasses as he looked over the documents I placed on the table. Interesting situation, he said slowly. I nodded. I want to sell my share of the property. He raised an eyebrow. Your daughter lives there. Yes. And her husband. Mr. Harper leaned back in his chair. Family conflicts can get messy when property is involved. I gave a small smile. I'm prepared for that. He studied me for a moment. You're not doing this impulsively, are you? No. He tapped the documents thoughtfully. You realise that if you sell your share, the buyer has the legal right to live in the house. Yes. Your son-in-law won't like that. I laughed quietly. He already doesn't like me. Mr. Harper chuckled. Fair point. He turned a few pages. There are investors who specialise in buying partial properties. I figured, but they usually buy them cheaply, he added. That's fine. He paused. May I ask why you're really doing this? I thought about Daniel's voice at the dinner table. Useless old woman again. Then I remembered something else. The way he spoke to Emily when he thought no one was listening. Cold, demanding, controlling, and suddenly my decision felt even more certain. I'm protecting my daughter, I said. Mr. Harper didn't ask further questions. Instead, he nodded slowly. Well, he said, I know someone who might be interested. He picked up his phone and made a short call. 10 minutes later, someone knocked on the office door. The man who walked in was tall, broad-shouldered and dressed in a dark coat. He looked more like a security guard than an investor. Mr. Harper stood up. "Margaret, this is Victor Kane." The man nodded politely. "Pleasure to meet you." His voice was calm, but there was something powerful about it, something that made people instinctively take him seriously. Mr. Harper gestured toward the chair. "Victor specializes in purchasing shared properties." Victor sat down and looked at the documents. "So you own 50% of a house," he said. "Yes? And the other half belongs to your son-in-law." "Yes." He looked up at me. "Does he know you're selling?" I smiled slightly. "Not yet." Victor leaned back. "I assume there's a story behind this." "Oh, there is." For the next few minutes I explained everything. The insults, the debts, the tension in the house. Victor listened quietly. When I finished, he gave a small nod. "I see." Mr. Harper asked the obvious question. "So, are you interested?" Victor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned toward me again. "If I buy your share," he said calmly, "I will probably move into the house." I nodded. "That's your legal right." "You're comfortable with that?" "Yes." Victor studied my face carefully. "You're a brave woman, Margaret." I smiled faintly. "Or maybe just a tired one." He laughed softly. Then he said something unexpected. "All right." Mr. Harper looked surprised. "You're serious?" Victor nodded. "I'll buy her share." My phone buzzed in my purse at that exact moment. I already knew who it was before I even looked. Daniel calling again and again and again. Victor noticed the phone vibrating. "Your son-in-law?" he asked. "Yes." "Does he know what's happening right now?" "Not yet." Victor gave a slow, amused smile. "Well," he said, standing up, "I think he's about to have a very interesting afternoon." I ignored Daniel's calls for almost an hour. My phone kept vibrating on the table inside Mr. Harper's office. Call after call, message after message. Finally, Mr. Harper looked at the screen and raised his eyebrows. "He seems, persistent." Victor glanced at the phone and smirked. People usually panic when they realize they're about to get a new roommate. I allowed myself a small smile. Let him panic. But then the phone buzzed again. This time it was Emily. That made my chest tighten. I answered. "Hello, sweetheart." Her voice sounded shaky. "Mom, Daniel just called the bank." I frowned. "And?" They told him someone requested documents about the house ownership. I looked at Victor and Mr. Harper. They were both watching me carefully. "Yes," I said calmly. "That was me." Emily gasped softly. "Mom, Daniel is freaking out." I heard Daniel's voice shouting in the background. "Give me the phone." Emily whispered quickly. "Please don't sell your share. We can fix this." Before I could answer, Daniel grabbed the phone. "Margaret!" he barked. His voice was completely different now. No arrogance, just raw panic. "What are you doing?" "I'm selling my share of the house," I said calmly. "You can't do that." "I legally can." There was a long pause. Then he lowered his voice. "We need to talk." "We already did." "No," he said quickly. "I mean privately." Victor leaned slightly closer, listening with interest. Daniel continued. "Just you and me. No lawyers." I almost laughed. "That sounds like a terrible idea." "Please," he said. That word surprised me. Daniel Carter had never said please to me before. "Where are you?" he asked. "I'm busy." "I'll come there." Before I could stop him, he hung up. I sighed. "He's coming," I told the men. Victor looked amused. "I'd like to meet him," Mr. Harper chuckled. "Oh, this should be interesting." 20 minutes later, the office door burst open. Daniel rushed inside. His hair was messy, his shirt half untucked, and he looked like he hadn't slept all night. He stopped abruptly when he saw Victor. "Who is this?" he demanded. Victor stood slowly. Victor Kane. Daniel ignored the handshake Victor offered. Instead, he turned to me. "You're actually doing this?" "Yes." Daniel ran his hands through his hair. "This is insane!" "Calling your mother-in-law useless at dinner is insane," I replied calmly. His face tightened. "Okay, I was wrong." Mr. Harper leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the scene. Daniel pointed at Victor. "And who is this guy?" Victor answered calmly. "I'm the man buying half your house." Daniel's face went white. "You're joking." "No." Daniel turned toward me again. "You can't bring some stranger into my house." "It's not only your house," I reminded him. His voice dropped dangerously low. "You're destroying your daughter's home." "No," I said quietly. "I'm protecting it." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Protecting it from what? Me?" Victor finally spoke again. "From financial collapse." Daniel's head snapped toward him. "What?" Victor leaned casually against the desk. "I did a quick check while you were driving here." Daniel's eyes widened. "What check?" Victor's voice remained calm. "You owe roughly $96,000 across 3 credit cards." Daniel froze. "You also have 2 personal loans totaling about $140,000. Mr. Harper raised his eyebrows. "Impressive research," Victor continued. "And your business investment?" Daniel's breathing became heavier. "What about it?" Victor gave a small smile. "The company you invested in filed for bankruptcy last month." The room fell silent. I looked at Daniel slowly. "So that's why you've been so tense lately." Emily didn't know. He never told her. Daniel's voice trembled with anger. "You had no right to look into my finances." Victor shrugged. "When I buy property with someone, I like to know who my neighbours are." Daniel looked like he might explode. Then suddenly he turned toward me. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "No." I stood up slowly. "I'm just done pretending everything is fine." Daniel stared at me desperately. "If you sell your half, everything collapses." "Why?" He hesitated. For the first time since I met him, Daniel looked truly scared. "Because," he said quietly, "if Emily finds out how bad things really are," his voice broke, "she'll leave me." And for a moment, I realized something shocking. Daniel wasn't just afraid of losing the house. He was afraid of losing my daughter. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Daniel's last words still hung in the air. "She'll leave me." Victor crossed his arms and looked at him calmly. "You should have thought about that before burying yourself in debt." Daniel ignored him. His eyes were locked on me. "Margaret, please." I had never seen him like this before. Not confident, not arrogant, just desperate. But before I could answer, the office door opened again, and a voice said quietly, "Leave you." We all turned. Emily was standing in the doorway. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying for a long time. Daniel froze. "Emily?" She walked slowly into the room. "You're in debt?" Daniel opened his mouth, but nothing came out. She looked at Victor. "Is it true?" Victor didn't sugarcoat it. "Yes." Emily turned back to her husband. "How long?" Daniel's shoulders dropped. "A while." "How long, Daniel?" "A year." The room felt suddenly smaller. Emily took a step back. "A year?" Her voice cracked. "You told me we were saving money." "I was trying to fix it," he said quickly. "I almost paid off one card." "Almost?" she whispered. Her hands started shaking. "You told me the house payments were safe." "They are," he insisted, "for now." Those 2 words hit her like a slap. Emily turned to me slowly. "Mum, did you know?" I nodded gently. "I suspected." Tears rolled down her cheeks. And that's why you wanted to sell your half? Yes. She covered her face with her hands. Oh, my God. Daniel stepped toward her. Emily, listen. She stepped back immediately. Don't. That one word stopped him completely. The silence that followed felt heavy. Then Emily lowered her hands and looked at him with a kind of calm that scared me. You called my mother useless. Daniel swallowed. I didn't mean, and all this time, she continued quietly, you were hiding this. I was protecting you. Emily laughed bitterly. Protecting me? She gestured around the room. You almost lost our house. I didn't, he shouted. Not yet, Victor said calmly. Daniel shot him an angry look. Emily wiped her tears. Then she said something none of us expected. Mum, I looked at her. Don't sell your half. Daniel looked relieved instantly, but Emily wasn't finished. Sell it, she said. Daniel's relief vanished. What? She turned toward Victor. You want to buy it? Victor nodded slightly. Yes. Emily took a deep breath. Then buy it. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. You're serious? She looked at him with tired eyes. For a year you lied to me. I was trying to fix things. You were hiding them. Daniel's voice softened. Emily, please. She shook her head. No. Then she said something that made the entire room go silent. You're not afraid of losing the house. Daniel looked confused. What? You're afraid of losing control. Victor quietly raised an eyebrow. Emily continued. You controlled the money. You controlled the decisions. You even tried to control my relationship with my mother. Daniel whispered. That's not true. Emily stepped closer to him. Then why did you call her useless? He had no answer. His silence said everything. Tears filled Emily's eyes again, but this time her voice was steady. I won't live like this anymore. Daniel looked like the floor had disappeared beneath him. Emily? She shook her head slowly. I need time. Daniel suddenly dropped to his knees, right there in the office. Please, he said, his voice broke completely. I can fix this. Emily stared at him. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she whispered something that chilled the room. You had a year to fix it. And she turned away. Daniel stayed on the floor. Victor looked at me quietly. Well, he murmured, that escalated. I exhaled slowly. Life had a strange way of revealing the truth, sometimes not with screams, but with silence. Emily walked over to me and took my hand. Mum, she said softly. Yes? Thank you for not staying silent. I squeezed her hand gently. Family protects each other. Behind us, Daniel was still kneeling, and for the first time since I met him, he finally understood something. Respect is not given by age. It is given by actions. And that day he had lost it.